want to see my third-degree burn?
Depends on where it is, Denny.
It's on my thumb. I don't know if you can get in there. I'm trying to let it air out right now, but
How'd you do
That's enough.
that?
cooking with oil, my famous crispy skin salmon recipe, ironically enough. I always know you lay the fish away from you, skin side down in the oil. I was busy, I was talking, wasn't paying attention. Laid it towards me, a big glob of oil. Just instantly took the first layer right. Oof. So yeah, that's been it's been a problem for 2 weeks. Not in addition, I also had a tree fall in my house in June. 500, yeah. So it's been a rough.
Monica, if you can confirm when we're live streaming, please.
Yeah, please.
I haven't got the pop-up.
Sorry about your crispy skin.
Yeah,
It is live streamed right now,
Okay.
Okay.
and the
Please
link is just
mute
going out.
yourself, everyone.
have a good meeting, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew, just give me a thumbs up when you think you've had enough time to send out that email. To let everyone know.
The email has gone out.
Okay, I think we can safely begin. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order at 9:25 a.m. Welcome, fellow council members. Welcome to college staff that are present today. I'd like to note that we have regrets received from Maria Pajdakovska and Paul Filion. And I would also like to advise council that the order in council revoking the appointment of Sarah Griffiths-Savelain was signed by the Lieutenant Governor in council on July 16, 2026. As a reminder to all council members to help observers distinguish our roles, I ask that council members include their designation along with their name, so simple ND after your name or public member. If you would please take a moment and do that. If anyone requires assistance, just put a message in the chat and staff are happy to assist there. So I'd also like to welcome our legal counsel, Rebecca Durkin. And today council will be joined by several guests during the meeting. We'll have Dr. Shelley Burns, ND, Chair of the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee for items 6.1 and 6.3. We will have Thomas Creans, CPA CA of Creans LaRose, our auditor for item 6.2. And we'll have Chris Gaetano of BFL Canada for item 7.2. And just a reminder that today's meeting is being live streamed via YouTube. And in this regard, I would like to acknowledge and welcome any registrants or guests who have registered to watch the live feed of today's meeting. On page 4 of your meeting package is included the college's land acknowledgement as developed by the Governance Committee. If you have not already done so, I ask that you please review the acknowledgement as an indicator of the college and council's commitment to peace, friendship, and respect of our Indigenous peoples. On page 5 of your meeting package, you'll find the updated video conference norms that have been adopted by council. These guidelines are designed to foster a respectful and supportive environment for all participants. I'd like to highlight some reminders for the benefit of our first-time attendees and viewers. I ask that you keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. And if you need to step away for a moment and turn off your camera, kindly let us know by putting a message in the chat. And additionally, my preference is that you raise your virtual hand for any questions or if you wish to speak, and that you raise your physical hand for any motions, consensus, or votes. A reminder on the method to raise your virtual hand, you click on the heart icon at the bottom of the screen, not the up arrow, and then click raise hand on the box that pops up. Does anyone have any questions or concerns regarding our norms? Okay, thank you. Since there are no concerns, these norms are adopted by council. Another housekeeping note, we'll use the high five process in the form of an online poll for seeking consensus when necessary while we use the video conference for our meeting. On page 6 of your meeting package, you'll find an outline of this method. As a quick reminder, a score of 5 means that you fully support the direction being discussed, while a score of 1 means that you're strongly opposed, and all the varying degrees of opinion in between. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, the materials for which can be found on page 7 through 85 of your meeting package. As a reminder, this item includes several documents such as minutes, reports, ratifications, and informational items that are presented for approval as one agenda item to improve efficiency. A few items worth noting that are included in today's consent agenda are the updated IBIT program and examinations policy, the examinations policy, the annual Type 2 occurrence report summary, and a couple informative memos from the CAND. If a council member wishes to discuss any individual document, we can do so. Let us know which document you wish to discuss. We will pull it from the consent agenda and add it to the main agenda into item 9. Does any council member wish to discuss any items contained in the consent agenda? Kathy.
So I just had a quick question because I know at our meeting we were also discussing with Governance Solutions about AI stuff, and there was something in the Gray Areas newsletter. So I'm just wondering whether or not that is on CoNO's radar to do any sort of training or integration of AI systems as well for protection, with AI being so common.
Andrew, can I ask you to speak to that?
Yes, of course. We are currently drafting 2 policies, one that would be proposed to be a governance process policy governing the council and the committees on the use of AI. And the second is an operating policy that would govern all of the college staff on their use of AI, what are the acceptable uses and what are the prohibited uses, in particular uploading information to AI. So those policies are actually being discussed between myself, Jeremy, and Erica tomorrow, and then we'll be bringing them forward with any edits. So I would expect that at your next council meeting, you'll have a draft governance process policy, which will have been vetted by the governance committee.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else wish to pull anything out of the consent agenda and add it to today's main agenda? Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented? Thank you, Amy. Second, Denny. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion is carried. Thank you. The draft main agenda was circulated with the materials ahead of the meeting and can be found on page 3 of your package. Please note the following proposed amendment. Item 5.2 currently reads in-depth review governance process policies terms of reference, which is an error. It should be corrected to read in-depth review executive limitations policies, ELO 1 to ELO 8. Are there any other items to be added to today's agenda, or any items? No, I don't see any hands. May I have a motion to adopt the main agenda as amended? Thank you, Lisa, and second, Dean. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion is carried. Thank you. Included in your meetings package at page 86 is the summary of the annual conflict of interest questionnaires completed by council. This is a reminder that these are provided as part of an increased transparency and accountability initiatives, and they align with the College Performance Measure Framework. The actual forms, as well as the summary, are available on the college's website. The purpose of summarizing and disclosing these forms is to ensure that all council members and observers are aware of any declared conflicts and to provide an opportunity for questions if any disclosures appear to have been missed. It is important to note that this disclosure process does not replace the individual fiduciary duty of each council member to identify and declare conflicts of interest whenever they arise. And a reminder for everyone that having a conflict of interest is not an indication of wrongdoing. It's simply an acknowledgement that the integrity of council's deliberations and decision-making is of the utmost importance. Registrants and members of the public must be able to trust that all deliberations and decisions are made solely in accordance with the college's mandate to serve and protect the public interest. At this time, if any council members have a conflict of interest to declare for any items on today's agenda, please raise your virtual hand. Okay. Andrew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the minutes, I just want to be clear that I am declaring conflict of interest with respect to item 8.2, which is in your in-camera session. That's a discussion surrounding the college and CANRA. I sit on the board of directors of CANRA. I also serve as its treasurer. So as a result, I will recuse myself from those discussions and leave you in Erica's capable hands to lead you through that discussion.
Thank you. And I'd also like to note that Andrew will not be present for item 8.3, which is his performance review. Denny.
And I'm also the Ontario representative for CANRA. Just thought I'd mention that. I think I can be part of that discussion. No, I cannot be.
I think it's probably best we put you in a breakout room during that part of the discussion.
Okay.
So for 8.2, we'll exclude you and then bring you back in for 8.3.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Denny.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a conflict of interest to declare for anything on today's agenda? Okay, Denny, if you wouldn't mind remuting yourself, please. Thank you. Okay. Item 4.1, a copy of the report of the council chair can be found on page 88 of your package. One item in my report that I'd like to highlight is that following our council dinner in May, some questions and concerns came up, prompting me to meet with a few council members who were affected. During these meetings, I reviewed our expectations regarding the governing style policy, GPO2, to ensure that everyone remains familiar with these rules. As chair, I am responsible under GPO5, which is the role of the council chair, for maintaining council's ongoing commitment to our governing style. And I was happy to use this opportunity to reinforce that shared understanding. Do any council members have any questions about my report? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, I don't see any hands. May I have a motion to accept the report of the council chair? Amy first, Aaron second. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, item 4.2 can be found beginning on page 89 of your meeting materials. At this time, I would like to invite Andrew Parr, our CEO, to present the report on regulatory operations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 89 are the highlights of the regulatory operations report, and the full report follows those highlights. Again, the purpose of this report is to allow you as council to satisfy yourself that the regulatory obligations placed on the college by the statutes are being fulfilled. As you will see from the report, we have a large number of regulatory activities that have been undertaken in the reporting period and so far in this year. I won't go into any particular section within the highlights. I think it's all fairly straightforward and relatively routine, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the highlights or the report itself.
Sorry, couldn't find my unmute button. Thank you, Andrew. Does anyone have any questions for Andrew on his report? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, Andrew, I have a report, if I may, or sorry, a question. It's two parts. And notice about the PLAR application that was mentioned. It says it was completed. Just curious, was that an approval of their registration? And then the second part is, was this our first PLAR application that we've processed or that we've completed?
With your permission, I'm going to defer that to Erica to speak to.
Absolutely.
So just as a reminder, the PLAR program is not a registration process. It's sort of an eligibility for registration process. So completion of PLAR allows someone to move on to our entry practice examinations, the practical and the jurisprudence. That individual was approved to move on to those examinations. And yes, this is the first individual who's gotten through the process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'd forgotten the process. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, any other questions anyone might have for Andrew based on his report? Okay, not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Andrew. May I have a motion to accept the report on regulatory operations at June 30 from the CEO? Kathy first, Denny second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 4.3 can be found beginning on page 101 of your meeting materials package. Again, I would like to invite Andrew Parr, CEO, to present the year-end report on operations.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. As Council will know, the college operations or staff focus in two particular areas. Obviously, one is the report we just considered, the regulatory operations. And the second really relates to the strategic initiatives or the initiatives that we undertake in support of accomplishing or achieving the ends as you have set them out in your policies. As a reminder, you have your strategic plan. It has priorities that you have set out in terms of what you would like to see the college do. The senior management team assembles an operational plan that reflects the activities that we are going to undertake to move the college forward towards your strategic objectives. This report is a version of that operational plan, but with the performance measures included and the outcomes. The report that you have before you is as of March 31st, 2026, which is the end of the prior year. That's a bit of a theme for today's council meeting. We're in that time of the year where we look at everything that's been concluded at the end of March. So you have the operations report, you'll have the financial statements, the audited financial statements, and the annual committee reports. So really the July meeting is focusing on closing the prior year, more so perhaps even than looking at where we are in the current year. What you'll find is that the majority of these activities have been marked as completed because we're moving from one year to the other. Though, to be honest, there's several that will not be marked as such simply because it's an ongoing activity. So if you look at the review of the regulatory framework, that's an activity that we're going to be continuing to do for at least another year, perhaps two, depending on how things unfold. So for the most part, most of the activities that we've identified and had planned to do have come to fruition. We're confident that we're moving in the direction that meets your strategic objectives. I won't go through every line. This is a fairly extensive report, so I won't go through every section with you. But again, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Oh, I am muted. My apologies. Thank you, Andrew. If anyone has any questions, please raise your virtual hand. Kathy, go ahead.
So because this is also only my second meeting, I just wanted to ask a question on the language of the document. So in some sections, it mentions the word stakeholders. In some sections, it mentions the word system partners. I'm wondering whether or not those are meant to be equivalent or if there's a difference between them.
What you're likely seeing is that because this document originates from a time frame prior to the council's changing its language, is that hasn't been fully updated. So stakeholders is a broad terminology that is not really considered appropriate any longer. Instead, we refer to system partners, which are organizations with whom we would partner in regulatory endeavors. And then we also use interested parties, which are organizations that have an interest in what we do, but we wouldn't necessarily be partnering with them. Third category would also be alliances, organizations that we are allied with to work together on broader public interest and regulatory matters, and that would be groups like HPRO and CANRA.
Okay, got it. And I'll just mention too, because I think there's some queries in the profession about whether or not if there was a demotion from a stakeholder to a system partner, but my understanding is that it's meant to be equivalent, correct?
There's no such thing as either a promotion or demotion with respect to how we refer to organizations with whom we would interact. We have simply moved away from the word stakeholder because it carries with it a connotation that is highly negative and frankly very offensive to in particular the indigenous communities. So we're trying to move away from that language. It's been embodied in our lingo for so long that it's going to take us a while to get used to it. An interested party is an organization that has an interest in what we do. All interested parties would be organizations with whom we would continue to consult, as we would with our system partners. A system partner would be the ministry, for example, where we need their approval on regulations. It would be other regulators whom we would partner with for investigations and those kinds of activities. An interested party is an organization that has, a vested interest in what we're doing, and we seek their input on the activities through our consultation programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. And I just want to remind council members that our role as council members is to protect the public interest. It's not our role to bring messages or carry questions from registrants to council. As a council, we are protecting the public interest. That is our sole duty here. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Andrew with regards to his report? Okay. I had just a couple, Andrew, if I may. And it's related to the questions Kathy was asking with the system partner questions. The Ministry of Health, I don't see any sort of formal meetings listed. Is that because your main interactions are generally phone calls? Or do you have formal, like a video conference or meetings specifically with the ministry?
Actually, that's an excellent question. That's an error. I don't know why it's not appearing there, but we've had 3 meetings with the Ministry of Health directly this year, as well as informal conversations with the management of the oversight branch. And so I think that dropped off for some reason. But I can say for certain that we've met with them to talk about laboratories. We've met with them to talk about point of care testing. I've had several conversations with Allison Henry, who's the director of the branch, and Jason Morier, who is the manager of the oversight section, as well as interactions with them through HPRO, because they also will attend HPRO meetings and make presentations. So that, thank you for pointing that out. That is an oversight.
Okay, thank you. And before I ask my second question, I'll just check in. Does anyone else have a question they wish to ask of Andrew? Okay, my second question, you mentioned about the college performance measure framework was suspended or on hold that year. Is it resuming in 2026 or is it still on hold?
That's an excellent question as well, Brenda. We don't know for certain. We know that at the end of 2025, going into this year, we were not required to submit a report. I know that there is activity underway to review the framework and update it. I believe that's what that's the purpose of not having done it last year. I honestly, I don't know specifically where they are in that process. I know that HPRO is involved, and several of the registrars. You may know that there was a while back I sat on a working committee. The ministry will convene a working group and they'll rotate who sits on that. So it's not always the same people. So I know some of my colleagues are working on that process with the ministry. I suspect that we'll be having something probably come out this summer. which I don't know if that would concern you, but it doesn't really concern me because really I don't think that the measurements are going to change, or certainly not the parameters. The performance indicators will not likely change. I think some of the verbiage around it or what they would look for in terms of our data might change a little bit, but that would all be stuff that we have regardless. So I'm not particularly concerned if there are, I would be concerned if there are changes to the key performance indicators, but we don't expect that's likely going to happen.
Okay, thank you. So on a quasi-political question then, do you anticipate if we have a change in leadership in the Ontario government to a different party that this testing might cease?
No, I suspect that I'm confident that the college performance measurement framework is actually an activity of the ministry. So it has the support of the director of the branch as well as the ADM and the deputy minister. It's not a political beast, if you will. It's not being looked at it from a political perspective. It's just part of of what they believe to be their oversight role. So a change in party would not affect this particular area. A change in the governing party would change the priorities that the ministry is undertaking. But I also suspect it's still several years before we would be seeing an election theoretically happening.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, any other questions for Andrew? I don't see any hands. Okay. Oh, Kathy, go ahead.
All right. One more question under 1.2 is talking about the college engaging with both registrants as well as the public. So I know that we have like the ICWs and the REPs. Are the ICWs also like marketed towards public, or is there anything else that the college does specifically to like engage with the rest of the public that consumes naturopathic care?
So anybody can register for the In Conversation with program. It appears on our website. It's not a part of our database to register, so anybody can register for it. And it also appears on our social media feed. So the public is made aware of it. I think typically what we have seen in reality is that some of our public representatives will attend these sessions more so than just the average person in the public. But again, it's not that they're not permitted. It's just that there's probably not a lot of awareness and interest in what's going on.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, one last call. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for such a thorough and detailed report. May I have a motion to accept the year-end report on operations from the CEO? Kathy first, Lisa second. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, we now move on to item 5, the Council Governance Policy Confirmation section of our agenda. So at this time, I would like to invite Dr. Amy Armstrong, ND, to lead Council through the governance policy confirmation process.
Thanks, Brenda. I think Monica's going to pull up a presentation that Barry has made. I'm your Barry today, so I will do my best to be Barry. So the governance policy confirmation process has 2 parts, as all of you know. And the first one is to identify if there are any concerns or questions in light of what Council Chair report was today and the CEO report for regulatory operations were. Having heard and considered today's reports from the Chair, CEO, and Deputy CEO, have Council members identified any issues arising from the information presented relative to any of the governance policies? I can't see hands, so if anyone shows them. And then are there any concerns that should be addressed in policy?
Okay, Amy, I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, nor am I. So the second part is to, so item 5.02 is to do a detailed review of certain policies in the annual council planning cycle. So in our meeting, we reviewed the executive limitation policies EL01 all the way through to EL08. And as you know, we sent out a survey to the governance committee and to the council for that. So the executive limitation policies are one of the 4 sets of governance policies. The other ones were the end statements, the council CEO linkage and governance process policies, and the detail of the limitations of the activities of the CEO, allowing them to do whatever they need to do from an operational means. So I always find them a little bit backwards to read, but essentially they're written in the negative. So they will sort of say things like the CEO shall not fail to do X, Y, Z, rather than laying out a set of instructions, allowing staff and the CEO to achieve those operational means, however necessary to do that. So we'll click ahead to the next section. So these are the policies that we reviewed. I won't read them all, but EL01 all the way to EL08. And there was a decent amount of feedback. So we'll go through any of the substantive feedback, which will come on the next slide. So we had 11 responses from council and from the governance committee. And then we reviewed all of that on July 6th at our meeting. You can click ahead. So one of the main pieces of feedback was in the EL02, this emergency CEO replacement, was should we kind of reference back to GP26. So for those who are not Brenda and don't have them all memorized, essentially that one is about replacing the CEO permanently. And so we decided it wasn't really necessary to reference back and forth because these policies, although they are standalone, they would be considered and implemented at the same time if there was a need to sort of replace the CEO in an emergency situation and then call on that GP26 to have the more permanent replacement. So we didn't think we had to reference back and forth between them in the policies because they would be considered together. And then we didn't need to put in that timeline because the policies essentially would cover that. So we appreciate the feedback, but we didn't make any modifications to that one. Then EL03 is communications and council support. So this one, it says that the CEO has to report in a timely manner, an actual or anticipated non-compliance with any policy, and it would have to report this to the council and provide explanation why there was non-compliance. The feedback was, what does timely manner mean? It doesn't say that, the CEO has to do this within X amount of days. It just says timely manner. So we talked about this and we just decided that because the college follows a modified version of the Carver model, that the CEO would be responsible for reasonable interpretation of what timely means in given circumstances, because there may be things that timely is more urgent or timely is, at the next council meeting. And so we left that to sort of follow in that Carver model there without putting sort of a hard number on it, because that may allow for things to go on too far or not get reported as quickly as they need to. So we didn't make any amendments to that one, but that was a big piece of feedback we had. And then there was a decent amount of feedback that came in from a couple of the financial policies. So EL05, financial condition activity, EL06, financial planning, budgeting, EL07, financial transactions, and EL08, asset protection. And so we discussed this and agreed that it would be helpful to have a more detailed review of all of those different executive limitations for finances. And so rather than bringing changes today, we're requesting that goes back to the Finance Audit and Risk Committee to do a more thorough review and to make recommendations back to the Governance Committee. And in our next cycle of executive limitation reviews, EL17, which is also a finance executive limitation around the reserve funds, would be included in that review. And then that would come back to the Governance Committee and to Council to kind of take a more detailed overview of those policies. So we can click ahead, I think, Monica. So are there any feedback, questions, comments that we have about some of the feedback and our response to it? I don't see hands. Brenda, do you?
No, if anyone has questions for Amy, please raise your virtual hand. I'm not seeing any hands. Amy?
I don't either.
Okay. Sorry, I was just gonna see if we needed to change the screen, but Monica's taking care of that.
Yeah. So, Brenda, do we need to do a motion to move that to the Finance Committee, or will we do that at the end of everything?
I will do that after you're finished this one. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So then I believe this is starting on page 136 of your package. There were some changes that we made to the executive limitation 04, which was treatment of staff. And you'll see that we removed quite a few of the points that were in there. And the reason was because a lot of the feedback we received and a lot of these sort of are covered in other areas. So I won't read all of them, but there were quite a few that overlapped into the college's personnel policies that were a matter of budgeting, that were operational tasks that didn't need to be included in the executive limitation for treatment of staff. And so you'll see that we removed sort of paragraphs 4 all the way through 11 because they are covered other places. Not that we don't think they're important, they just weren't necessary within this executive limitation. And then there were a few other minor changes. So removing the wording of Canada because it wasn't necessary for how the legislation works for that. And some minor wording changes in point 3. So rather than saying establish personnel policies acceptable to council, we changed that to sort of align with generally accepted management principles for not-for-profit organizations. So while that one has quite a few changes on paper, it was sort of just refining that to keep it in the vein of executive limitations rather than operations. Any thoughts, questions?
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the changes to EL 04 from any council member? I'm not seeing any hands. Amy, I quite like how it's cleaned up. I think that made a lot of sense to remove the redundancies as they aren't needed as part of a governance policy. They're more a management operational side. So thank you, and thank the governance committee for their work on that. Okay, I don't see any hands for questions. So may I have a motion to adopt the recommended policy change to EL 04 as presented? Naomi first, Aaron second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. So also to note, so the report from the governance committee is, as Amy was saying, is the referral of the EL 05, EL 06, EL 07, EL 08, and EL 17 to the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee for review and recommendations of changes. Does anyone have any questions on that plan or that proposal from the governance committee? Okay, so may I have a motion to refer? I'll say them again: EL 05, EL 06, EL 07, EL 08, as well as EL 17 to the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee for review, and any recommendations for changes to then go to the governance committee. Naomi first, Kathy second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay. Thank you, Amy, for leading us today on behalf of the governance committee. Barry would be proud. Okay. Now we're on to regular business. Before we move, I would like to confirm there we are, that Shelley and Thomas are here. Okay. So at this time, I want to welcome both Dr. Shelley Burns, ND, and Thomas Creans of Creans LaRose, LLP, the auditor, to our meeting, and then invite Shelley as chair of the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee to present the committee's report on the draft audited financial statements as found in your package beginning on page 140.
Great, thank you, Brenda. As you can see, there's the auditor's report and draft financial report. I'd like to just make a few notes for you guys. The audit report being presented is for the time period of April 1st, 2025 to March 31, 2026. The college was in receipt of a clean audit report with only one adjusting entry and one reclassification entry to amend an entry from the previous audit year. A materiality rate of 3% of revenue was used by the auditor to determine whether any financial information was omitted or misstated that would affect the outcome of the college's financial statements. There were no issues identified. At the end of the year, as budgeted, the college ended with a deficit of $350,425, as opposed to the budgeted deficit of $522,862. There were no ongoing concerns identified by the auditor regarding the sustainability of the college. That's it, Brenda.
Oops. Thank you, Shelley. Does anyone have any questions for Shelley on the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee's report? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I am seeing one. Lisa, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is for Shelley to answer or Thomas. Just looking over those reports and that we were trained recently to look for, I guess, red flags or how to read reports better. I looked at something and I saw something that didn't quite make sense to me. So I'm not sure who's best to explain it. So it was on page 150 of the material, and it came under council fees and expenses. And I looked at what the numbers were in 2025, which the cost was $67,118. And then 2026, it now is at $194,641. And I'm not sure where that change came or if that could be explained.
So this question will fall under our next agenda item, but I'll let Thomas go ahead and address it now so you don't have to repeat the question, and then we'll come back to conclude 6.1. Thomas, if you wouldn't mind addressing that question.
Yeah, so certainly. Thanks for the question, Lisa. And that's part of the audit process that we go through. We look at changes or numbers from year to year. And as Shelley pointed out, we look at things that are material. Material is $120,000. So we start our audit by doing an evaluation of changes in numbers. And this is one thing that we looked at. And included in those costs of council's fees was an evaluation fee that was had during the year. And there are also some legal costs that are in there. So that was the main reason for that increase in doing it. I don't have all the details of the cost, but that's why there's an increase in that cost. And you'll see in the expenses, there's some other expenses as well, such as complaints and inquiry fees for consulting fees are up. So we go through all of those. Does that answer your question, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And that's...
I would like to know more about it, but I'll get that at a different time.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just a breakdown.
And another way to look at it as you're reviewing financial statements throughout the year is that what is the cost budgeted for? So we could have a cost, let's say it would be for, well, the council fees budgeted for a certain amount. And so you had 67,000 last year. Was the budget for this year, did it include the evaluation? And was the budget around 180, 190? So that's another comparison to use for looking at changes in expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, would you like to speak to that question?
Yes, and I can confirm that the major distinction there is going to be the evaluation that we do with Satori Consulting. So the council evaluation operates on a 2-year cycle. 1 year is a shortened version, and that's the one that was just completed. And then one is a longer where we do an evaluation of all of the council, individual committee members, council members, they do their peer review. So the money that you're seeing here is the result of the larger evaluation, which we do every other year. So that's the real big difference in here in terms of the amount of work that Satori would undertake on behalf of the council in its evaluation process.
Thank you. And Lisa, again, we're going to come back to this. So if you have further questions for Thomas, absolutely, you can bring them back, or if you want further clarification. So are there any other questions for Shelley, just going back to her report, that anyone has? Okay, thanks, Shelley. So may I have a motion to accept the Finance Audit and Risk Committee's report on the draft audited financial statements for 2025 to 2026? Kathy first, may I have a second? Amy second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, so item 6.2, as you're well aware, the auditor's report and the audited financial statements start on page 142 of your package. So at this time, I want to invite Thomas Creans to present his auditor's report and the audited financial statements.
Certainly. Thank you for allowing me for the time to go through the audit. Overall, I'm just going to talk about the financial statements briefly, but overall, the audit process went quite well. We start with an audit scope, our plan for the audit, and what we look at is, did the audit change throughout the period of time? Were there unusual things we found? So there's nothing changed in our actual audit process. We started with our materiality and used the entire materiality through the entire audit. If we look at our auditor's report, we provide a clean audit opinion on the financial statements. There's no qualification on the report. And in those 3 pages, the independent audit report, what we're trying to explain is what is the process for the audit? It's more for the outside public to say, you've had an audit, what is the process? There's a number of things there's a lot that goes through the audit, but what we're really looking at is a couple of things is we look where there's a risk of material misstatement, not that we're saying that there is, but that's the focus of the audit. We get an understanding of internal controls because to audit, we have to understand internal controls. We look at the accounting policies used and are they appropriate? And then we look at this odd thing called, we always have to look at management's use of going concern. So whether you have $3 million in net assets or 0, we have to look at going concern. And then we look at the overall presentation of the financial statements because, as I said, that the audit report is ours, the financial statements are yours. So if we're looking at it with, management looking at the financial statement, are there areas we can make the statements more readable? On the audit, the number side to it, on the statement of financial business or balance sheet, you do see some variances in there on it. Overall, the assets are about $6,289,000, so an increase of about $350,000. Something that is new on the financial statement is the loan receivable, the CANRA that's on there. And you'll see there's a $129,000 long-term portion, a short-term portion. Because that loan was something that was different, we disclosed it separately on the financial statements. On the liability side, the liabilities are up, and this is important. They've gone from about 3.9 million to 4.6 million. The biggest increase is deferred revenue, and that's gone up by about $600,000. And deferred revenue is fees received in advance for the next calendar year. So if you look at liabilities going up because the accounts payable were up, that would be a bit of a challenge. But in this case, it's the deferred revenue portion. The difference between the assets and the liabilities are the net assets. And you do see we have those net assets separated between the unrestricted and the other funds that we held on there. And because of the loss in the year, which was budgeted for, those net assets have gone from 1,985,000 to 1,634,000. And then I'll just go through a couple more pages. The statement of operations. So we see the total revenues up by about $150,000 for the year, and the total expenses up by about $500,000 for the year. So as Shelley pointed out, the budget, the losses there, the $350,000 was budgeted, and it was less than budget. And that's also, as I said, Elise asked the question, it's part of our audit. We look at it and say, there's a loss for the year. I mean, you are a not-for-profit, so you do have, gains and losses, but we look at, was that budgeted? And then there's details on the actual expenses, which I won't go through. And the last item, there's notes to the financial statements, which I will not go through. The last item on the financial statement is a statement of cash flows. So this is important to find out where the cash is coming from or where it's going to. At the top of that page, we have an increase from operating activities of $165,000. So that's very positive. And then we use some of that cash for the loan that went out and for purchase of equipment. So the cash decreased by $9,643,000. So when you're looking at a cash flow statement, if there is a decrease in cash, this gives you the detail of it. But the most important part about the cash flow is that there's a positive cash flow from operating activities. And the notes, which I won't go through in any detail, we look at these notes to say, are the notes transparent? Is there anything we should add to the financial statement notes to describe things better in the financial statement? Or are there any new policies that are being put in there? So the notes were substantially, just looking through it, the same as last year with adding the note for the receivable. So those are your financial statements.
Thank you, Thomas. So any questions for Thomas regarding the financial statements that were in your package? Lisa, was your question earlier answered to your understanding everything? Okay, thank you. Okay. Denny, go ahead.
Hi. Just on page 158, I think I know what this means, but can I have clarification around under point number 8, commitments, premises lease commitment, underneath that. In addition, the college is required to pay common area costs, which are estimated to be $82,000 per year. Can you please explain to me or refresh my mind about common area costs?
I could attempt, Denny, but I'm going to have Andrew or Thomas, whichever one of you feels you'd like to ask. But generally, common area in a building is the areas that are used by everyone in the building. But Andrew or Thomas, do you want to go ahead, or do you want to turn it to Andrew? Okay.
Andrew can certainly chime in as well. So the important thing about this is that the commitment note shows commitments going forward. So that's why we show all these numbers that are here. And the ones that we know, so you see the premises lease commitment note, it says minimum rental commitments are, and we know in 2027 it's the $95,000. The common carrier costs we're estimating based on the common cost of the property.
And if I could add to that is the common costs are not only if they do include the common costs of the common areas, but also we're not billed individually for our hydro, we're not billed individually for our heat. So that is basically all paid by the landlord and then basically divvied up between everybody within the building based on your square footage. So rent is a combination of your leasehold agreement, which gives you a value per square foot, plus your share based on that square footage of the common maintenance of the building. So heat, hydro, janitorial services, elevator services, all of those other things that are necessary to maintain the building, the tower.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Kathy, you have a question?
I'm just going to build on that. Is it commonplace that you would see that common area fee be very similar to what the total rent is, since one of them is 82 and the other is 95? I guess this is also my naivete about what it costs for common areas of a business building.
So if I may, when we go to market looking for a venue for an office space, and I will pause and just say when we moved to this office space, we cut our square footage in half. So we were downsizing to make sure because we didn't need as much space as we would have in the past because we were now primarily remote. But we do have functions that need to be done in an office. So when we went there, we know when we go to market, there are your rent is two components. It's your square footage per your fee for how much space you have, and then the common element. So this is not only common, this is how it's done in the commercial sector. It is your square footage plus your share of the common fees. So when we go to market, we combine those to then do a comparison on what is the value we're getting at a particular venue or office space. So this has happened with our last lease as well, when we were with Medallion on, I can't remember the name of the street, near Queen Street.
John? Was it John?
John Street. Thank you. Yes, John Street. So this is absolutely the way that commercial property is billed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Thomas? I have a couple, if I may. I'll go with one first, Thomas. On the statement of changes in net assets, I'm looking specifically at page 5. Is there a reason we don't show movement from the, say, the business continuity fund to unrestricted, so that unrestricted is not in a deficit? Is there a reason we don't show that to make it clear that we've actually had to withdraw money? Because it's not like you have a bank account with minus $400,000 in it, but that we had to pull money from a reserve fund to balance that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so each one of the reserve funds in note number 7 has a policy for how much is there to be put into the reserve fund and changes to it. So the actual change in the net assets are really up to the committee or the board to say, should there be a change? I think it's something we talked about at the committee, to say that you now have this unrestricted net assets of $431,000. So if potentially there is another budget loss, then there would have to be a motion to say that we can't continue with this large, if the unrestricted net assets went to, unfortunately, $800,000, then there would have to be a decision, are we able to take it out of some of those funds? But again, that's not our choice as the auditors to make. We're guided by the council or by the committee.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Andrew, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Madam Chair. I think what you might do is make sure that we raise that as a part of the FARC, the Finance Audit and Risk Committee discussions, because the reason why the money wouldn't be moved is that currently EL 17 doesn't mandate it. And of course, we can't move money from the fund back into operations without either a motion of the council, as Thomas has suggested, or this policy which mandates that certain activities be undertaken. So I think that's an excellent question that we can discuss further when we get before the committee and then on to governance and back to council.
Okay, thank you. I do have a second question for Thomas, but I'm going to check in with anyone else before I do my second question, if there are any other questions. Okay, so Thomas, you've heard this question before, and I'm going to ask it again with council now. With regard to the expenses, so statement of operation expenses, our package, page 150, page 7 of the document, would it be possible, and if council's in agreement with this request, to have the expenses categorized by department, so we know what the expenses are that are going to, say, the discipline or complaints, or to the different areas. And I recognize that salaries would need to be excluded for obvious, confidentiality reasons, and maybe not all items could be categorized, but it would help council probably better track spending accountability and maybe identifying cost trends in different departments if we could categorize expenses by departments, whether it's on the statement of operations or whether it's appended to, like a second. I'm not sure what works best from your perspective or management's accounting, but what do you think?
This is on the audited financial statement you're referring to, changing the format of that, or in your internal financial statements?
Good question, whether it ends up being both or whether it's just a separate document. Basically for council to see expenses categorized by department. So yes, I'm not sure whether, because that might make it harder for you to do previous year comparison in the audited financial statements. And so maybe an appended document where it's done that way. I'm not sure what's the best approach.
Yeah, and we did talk about that with the committee to say that if you want to make that change, we could make that retroactive. And, I started my presentation to say that the financial statements are yours, not my firm. So if, the committee went back and looked at it and said this would be more transparent, more readable, more understanding, then that change could be made. And we would work with the people for next year to say, you're changing the allocation of these expenses, so let's change the audit report. What we don't want to have the audited financial statements vastly different from the internal ones, because then you'll be reviewing the internal ones and you get to the audit and you'll say, what has our auditor done? He's grouped everything differently and we can't follow it too. So again, I think it's more like the other point that you brought up about the net assets, more discussion for, I assume, at the committee level to say, should we revamp the financial statements in that manner?
So if management then revamp theirs, then as an auditor, you could simply incorporate that and continue and sort of adapt the previous year comparison, keep it going?
Yeah,
Okay.
and what we would do is we'd work with management to say, you're making these changes, so could we understand how things are being regrouped this year and get that process done for last year? And that's fairly straightforward. And then as part of the audit, we would say, how did that process work? Was it followed properly? Because again, we're changing some of the financial statements. What controls were put in place to ensure that everything is grouped properly? At the outset, and this is highly unusual, if we just couldn't figure out the previous year's figures, how it was grouped, we would unfortunately have to keep them grouped in this the way you have right now, but that normally wouldn't happen. We can usually go back and regroup everything in a comparative basis.
Okay, thank you. Dean had his hand up. Dean, did you have something you wanted to ask before I go to Andrew?
Yeah, I think actually all of my questions have been answered. It's a bit of a dilemma from what I see it. I'm not really interested in paying again to restate financial statements. I would be leaning more to doing maybe I strongly support some internal reporting where we break it off, but then that's adding to the college's workload. So that's a bit of a dilemma too, but I would like to hear what the finance committee has to say about this and see if we can get that some information, because I know what I'm searching for. I want everyone to understand how much money we sink into discipline. That's one of my main goals, and that's what I'm hunting for. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. And I wasn't proposing we revamp this year's. Obviously, this is for next year's. Andrew, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one of the comments that Thomas made, which was that we don't want there to be a significant difference between what you see quarterly and what your audited statements are. And so the reason why we present the quarterly statements in the way we do is so that it matches up to what the audited statements are going to look like, so that you can be familiar with how they're being displayed, and you can see what's gone from quarter to quarter to quarter into the audited statements, so that again, there's no surprises. I think having a conversation at the Finance Audit and Risk Committee about either changes to the statements, or even if it is a sort of a secondary amended report, we can have that conversation. Just a caution, depending on how we do it, there are 20 different departments and programs operating within the college. So again, we could go so far as to have way too much detail that also won't really give you much help in terms of understanding where things are. So I think it's a conversation that we should have, and we're happy to be a part of that and to talk about what we're looking for. It's the same conversation I want us to have when it comes to EL 07 or 45 and so on, is that I want us to understand what we want those policies to do before we ever look at the wording of the policy. So what do you want these statements to do for you? And then let's look at how we get to where you want to be in a way that we don't lose the valuable comparative data from prior years. So it may take us a little longer to get where you want to be in terms of the council's desire, but I think it's prudent that we take our time and make sure that we don't lose data, that we know where we're going and what we want to accomplish for you and your oversight responsibilities in terms of what we present in your reports.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding that issue about potentially amending the financial statements or creating a secondary one by department? Okay. All right. Any other questions for Thomas on the financial statements? Okay. So may I have a motion to accept the auditor's report and to approve the draft audited financial statements for 2025-2026 as presented? Dean first, Naomi second. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion is carried. Okay, thank you, Thomas, for joining us today, presenting your audit report and the draft financial statements, answering our questions. Please pass on our thanks to your team for their hard work on the audit.
Yes, and thank you for the time, and just as importantly, for your questions, because we always like to see an engaged group. I mean, this is your chance to talk about the financial statements, questions you have. So I certainly appreciate the questions, and have a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay, for item 6.3, I'm going to invite Shelley Burns again to discuss the appointment of an auditor for the next fiscal year.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I'd like to remind council members that the auditor is a council appointee who works on behalf of the council to make proper inquiries about the financial status of the college. The appointment is made annually, and an auditor is typically reappointed unless the council or board of directors no longer has confidence in their ability to work in the interests of the council and college independent of management. The Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee is recommending the reappointment of Creans LaRose LLP. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Are there any questions for Shelley regarding the appointment of the auditor? No, not seeing any hands. May I have a motion to appoint Creans LaRose LLP as the auditor for the fiscal year 2026 to 2027? Denny first, Lisa second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, Shelley, for presenting for us today on behalf of the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee.
My pleasure. I'm going to wish everyone a good rest of your day. Nice to see everyone again. Take care.
Thanks, Shelley. Bye-bye. Okay, it is almost 10:30. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to resume at 10:45. Please mute yourself and turn off your cameras while you're away, and I will see you back at 10:45. Hello, we're just waiting for one or two more, but I think we can resume. Welcome back. So we're on to item 6.4. The Health Professions Procedural Code requires that statutory committees established under the code file annual reports with the council. In the interests of transparency, the council has asked that all committees provide annual reports. These reports have been assembled into one report for all the committees and can be found in your meeting package beginning on page 161. Council is asked to consider and accept these reports. So may I have a motion to accept the annual committee reports for the period April 1, 2025 to March 31, 2026? Kathy first, may I have a second? Aaron second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion is carried. Thank you. Monica, may I confirm that Sandy is, thank you, is in the waiting room. Okay, for our next item, item 7.1, I would like to welcome Sandy Varecchia of Satori Consulting, there she is, to our meeting, and I'm invite her to present the results of the council evaluation for the past year and to lead council through a discussion. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you so much. Nice to see everyone. I will just share my screen. Everybody can see that. Okay, great. Thank you for having me today. I hope your meeting is going well so far. As I said, we're going to review this year's results, and this year was a skinny version. And sometime every second year we do a full peer review, but this is just simply the council effectiveness results that we did back in May. And so really what I want to think about today is, where would better governance discipline create more confidence or clearer oversight? And there's only a couple of areas that had lower scores, but if we could maybe take some time and chat through that and maybe come up with a couple of action items for council as we leave this meeting. And so the results, overall, you've read it in your package, the results remain high, and it's year over year they are high, and there's a high bar for everybody to sort of meet every year. But I think just overall, from a governance perspective, that your organization is doing a very good job, or your council is doing a very good job of staying in the governance zone and working through the issues of the college with the staff members. So you should commend yourselves on that. But we're going to discuss the areas where we're a little bit lower and perhaps have some areas that we can walk away with some action items. So the first one is risk oversight. There was 2 questions that ranked at 8.4, which I know is not low, but this is always in the spirit of how can we improve. And so when we think about that, the 2 8.4s were that the council has the skills to provide effective risk oversight, and that they understand the college's top risk and how management is managing them, because it's not your role to manage them, but it's understanding what they are and what management is doing to keep them at bay. So I wanted to sort of talk about risk a little bit, because risk oversight is an important role of the council, and maybe start with the positive side of what helps council today understand whether risks are being effectively managed. What do you get that is helping you in understanding risk and the risk of the college? Anyone want to weigh in?
Okay, now we have some people weighing in. Go ahead, Kathy.
I might just ask a very general, again, what might sound like a naive question of when we're talking about risk, are we talking about like risks associated with the profession, risk to the public? Are we talking about financial risk, sustainability risk, or what are you referring to specifically when you say risk in general?
We're talking about, so not necessarily risk to the profession unless it's in that context, but we're talking about the general overall risks of the organization that you'd be looking at. So financial risk would be one of them, reputational risk, whatever you likely get from management, a risk registry where you go through those top risks, the ones, and you look at the likelihood of impact. And so there's many risks that sort of come into play.
Thanks.
Okay, Naomi.
To answer your question, we do get very good reporting, very detailed reports from the CEO and the operations side. So it's really impressive.
Wonderful. Great.
Dean?
I just wanted to say that I never really want to feel confident about handling risk well. And I'm not kidding. It's something, risk comes from all over the places. And if you feel you're on top of risk, you're not. So when it comes back to 8.4, well, I think that's not too bad. And I do agree with what Naomi said. We do have very good reporting. We are fairly well informed about what's going on. So I do feel good about that. My ability to make decisions maybe is a little risky, but it's like we are well informed about everything. And I don't want to feel confident about risk. And I don't think anyone on this council should be confident about risk because you never know where it's going to come from.
That's absolutely for sure. And so I think that in the next question is what would make you feel more confident that the risk is being managed? Is there something more that you need? And yes, risk comes from everywhere. But from a risk oversight perspective of what the council's role is there something that would allow you to move that to a 9, as many of your other questions are? What might help the council be more confident?
Kathy?
So I'm going to say I'm new to the council as well. So I haven't had the opportunity to go through too much of this, but I will say like being able to see the statistics and data that gets presented by Andrew Parr is really helpful because I think it also allows us to watch for trends where we can anticipate whether or not there are certain risks that might be coming up. And I'll also say, like, I have confidence too, the fact that we got to do some additional training at our last council meeting on like how to be able to interpret the financial statements. That was also very useful, since again, this is brand new to me in terms of what are we actually looking for when we're looking at these documents. So there have been things that have been presented very well from my limited experience so far. And I think just like monitoring for some of those trends so that we can anticipate if there are other things that could be coming up that we need to be on top of is helpful to have those numbers.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. Good. Anything anybody else can think of that might help improve the number in terms of risk that you would likely want from the management team? And I know that the management team does a great job.
Naomi?
Sure. I'm just thinking that having council members identify the risks that they're concerned about and having a place to have that discussion might be helpful because when we're looking at reports, then we respond to the reports. But having a chance to have that discussion and have whether it's could be at the committee level so that each committee talks about risks that relate to them and then that's brought forward to council, just to set aside basically a place to have that discussion, whether it's at the committee or the council level, so that council can talk about the risks that that concern them. And there's probably answers there. It's probably somebody's working on it, but we just don't know. So it's just, if just actively making the time to or space to raise these questions and talk about risk, because it is, as Dean says, it's, you know, it's ongoing. There's always different risks. Some of it's going to be operational, some of it's policy, and it's hard to get a handle on it. Like this AI question is a good one, right? So just having an opportunity to document that might help.
Excellent. Okay. So a bit more space to ask more questions about it, and I'm not sure how your process works now, and perhaps one of the staff members, maybe Andrew, you can jump in. When you're bringing your risk registry forward, is there a robust discussion about risk? And the second part of that question is, are the questions that council are asking outside of the registry, but just in general, are there a lot of risk-based questions?
Are you asking me that question? Sorry,
Yeah, I
Sandy.
am.
Okay. So the risk discussion happens annually. It happened last year in July. We're bringing back the risk register to the September meeting. Um, I I won't say that was or was not robust, but the opportunity is absolutely there for council members to raise any questions in terms of what they think the risks are. I mean, the register sets out what the risks are, what the mitigation techniques that are being used. All of that is there. But as you can imagine, with an organization of this size and scope and regulation, it's a fairly extensive register. So it really will be up to council to sort of try to take some time to delve into that when they get it, and then to highlight what their questions are going to be, which, you know, we certainly invite them. Naomi did mention the committee, and there is a committee. The Finance Audit and Risk Committee will be looking at the risk register probably in advance of the next council meeting. So again, that committee will have an opportunity to look at those. Uh, and just so that everybody is aware that when the register is created, it comes from the program areas. So while not perhaps necessarily the committees, it's certainly looking at the operations and the way in which we're managing the regulatory programs that really does identify where the risks might come from.
Great.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, for sure. I think it does. Okay, and so it's been a year since you reviewed it, and so going through it again in September, that will be helpful as well. And as Andrew mentioned, there is room for discussion around it. So do make sure that you are kicking the tires on it and ensuring that you understand, and because I know that staff will have good, eloquent answers to all of your questions. Brenda.
Thanks, Sandy. One thing might be helpful is a risk management refresher training. And maybe this is something for next May when we have our training day, but helping council, the financial literacy one we did was excellent. I think it really helped council members feel more confident around financial statements. So I think maybe the same with risk management might be helpful for us.
Okay, terrific. And so is there anything that anybody believes that council should be doing differently or requesting differently? Or is it just that there's, as Andrew sort of pointed out, it is a large risk registry. There are a lot of risks. Some obviously are weighted heavier than others. But is there any more that you want other than perhaps Brenda's suggestion about refresher training regarding risk? Dennis.
Denny?
Hi, I'm speaking more to question number 2. It sounds like we're putting them all together right now in this conversation. One thing that does concern me is I have the lived experience of being in the profession, as do many of council members, and hearing crosstalk that happens. I'm not sure that the public members have access to the tone sometimes, or whatever the right word is. The tone is between the profession and the college. And I'm wondering if that would be helpful in keeping us all on the same page with respect to what the tone in the profession is, knowing that our primary, that our only job is to protect the public.
And Denis, what might that look like?
Well, whether they have access to, say, some of the emails that go out to just the members of the profession that are directly challenging of CoNO and its procedures and policies, so that they see the same things that we in the profession on the council see, rather than us having to bring it up to people on the council to say, hey, did you know that, there's this discussion or this meeting or this town hall and this was brought up and CoNO's part in that situation was brought up, and to me it seemed really skewed, but I'm just talking for one person. I'm just wondering if the public members on this council have access to some of that conversation, and would it be prudent for them to be added to those mailing lists?
Denny, can you clarify for me how this impacts risk with respect to the college's operation?
I feel it would contribute to conversation and information, so that there is we're all, like I said, we're all on the same page, whether we are in the profession or a public member of the college that is regulating the profession. So for me, this is more about everybody having all the information as we move forward, as we have some of our delicate discussions.
Okay. Great.
It's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
So.
And well, you sort of had a question and baked in there a little bit about, do they, I think, have the same access?
Yes, that's true.
And so maybe that's a good staff question to answer.
Well, and before that, I will be, and hopefully, I know I'll be corrected if I'm wrong. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Council will have, they will have already proactively maybe let council know. I just don't know if there's any policy about that, or if it's based on us bringing it up individually with the council.
Thanks, Denny. Andrew, I'm going to ask you to speak to that, please, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm not sure what I'm to speak to. I guess council gets its information from the briefing materials that we present to you. That should be your source of information. Anything beyond that is not verifiable information. So members of the profession, even members of the public, I could pull some emails from our systems and show you some of the very unusual kinds of sentiment that you'll get from the public. So I'm not sure why this is such a focus for Denny in terms of the profession. We get all kinds of diverse views from all kinds of diverse groups of people. We bring forward to the council through our briefing materials all of the relevant information that's necessary for you to make a decision. That's what you should focus your attention on when you're debating and discussing initiatives. Bringing in external information runs the risk of introducing bias into the process. You have to know that what you're getting is verifiable. Individuals have opinions. If you're not sure about that, go on TikTok or go on Instagram. You'll find a wide variety of opinions on everything. I'm not sure that's necessarily reliable information on which to make regulatory decisions. So I think my caution to you is we give you what you need in your briefing materials. That's our job. and I give you enough information or as much information as possible without dragging you down into the weeds so that you get every opinion. Just look at the consultation materials. Extensive, detailed information brought forward to you last December about the feedback. So it's not that we're not giving you or you're not getting what you need, it's there. But there's a certain amount of screening that has to be done to ensure that you're focused on an impartial, fair, objective, transparent decision-making process free of bias. And so that's what I think our job is to do. And I don't know, I feel that we've done an excellent job at doing that in terms of your briefing materials. And I remind council, you always have the opportunity to say, can we get a little more information? No one's going to be upset when a council member or the council as a whole says, you know what, could we get more information in this area? Because no one's perfect. So I invite council to always do that if you feel you're not getting everything that you need. But it's a caution. There's a lot of opinions out there, and it's generally known that the regulated professions, health and otherwise, are not always big fans of the regulatory bodies. That's given. It's kind of like people are not all that big fans of the police either, and the roles are not the same, but there are some equivalencies there. So that's my caution to you. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Andrew. Right. Kathy, do you have something different to ask or to add?
I
Not
just
on the same
wanted to
topic?
add briefly, like clarity of information, I think is something that's really important that we're also always trying to focus on when we're going through these things as well. And perhaps that's some of where it gets mistranslated. And there could be some reputational risk associated with that, which is part of the reason why I brought up the difference between a stakeholder and, a interested party as well. Of there was an area of misunderstanding, it seems to be, of does that mean that, things are different? Yes, that's about how the profession interprets it. I get that. I think the risk is if NDs think that we're trying to make things difficult for them and they leave the province, are we losing access to care? Or is there going to be, again, it's reputational risk about the college is a big piece of it. And it seems like some wasted energy as well if these things could be better clarified so that they're not an issue as well. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and I know that you work very hard on this. So I think it's just a clarity thing.
Thank you,
But with
Kathy.
due
Andrew, I'm going
respect,
to ask you. Sorry, go ahead,
yeah,
Andrew.
with due respect, that's not your job as a council member. So, and I think this is where we're running into problems. I mean, first of all, a council member's role is not to explain to the profession what the council's position is. That's the council's job, or the college's job. That's the staff's job. So if staff or if individuals in the profession don't understand the terminology shift, they should ask us. They should come to the college and ask us those questions. And I know what you're going to say. So, well, they're afraid to come and ask you. Well, I'm sorry, but it's time to put our big boys and girls pants on and be adults and come forward and ask questions. If you have an honest question, we'll give you an honest answer to it. So your role as a council member and all council members is to oversee the activities of the college. It's to provide oversight to make sure we're fulfilling our mandate and serving the public interest. That's your role. And it's not to guide individual registrants. It's not to really, you don't actually have a role with individual registrants. The committees have roles with registrants. The staff, the communications arm of the college has a role with registrants.
Terrific.
Thank you for clarifying that, Andrew. Kathy, if I can remind you to mute yourself now, please. Okay, Sandy, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for that. And it's interesting to sort of to get clarity on that sort of thing. But I think, Andrew, what you just said was, if you read question number 1, provide effective risk oversight, and that's what your role is. And you do that by asking really good questions and ensuring that you get the proper answers. So So it sounds like there's, maybe some training that could happen around the risk, but I'm sure that when it comes to you in September, there'll be lots of really good risk discussion at that point. The next area was sort of independence and debate. And so again, not low numbers, but lower than the others. One is council's ability to act independently of senior management is demonstrated through, it says rejecting recommendations, but really is about having a robust debate and potentially rejecting something or asking for more. And an 8.4. And then as council, we engage in an appropriate amount of debate before we decide a strategy. So that was an 8.6. So I want to make sure that up top it says, trust in management is not the same as council independence. And because there is trust in management, and management does work very hard to bring what they need to bring to council. Your role is in an oversight role, and so you can't rubber stamp things. So you have to have enough debate. But what I've heard time and time again when we're having this discussion is that the staff brings things so tightly and efficiently brought to you that there isn't as much comment or questions about it. And so we just want to make sure that we are having healthy trust with our management team, healthy independence from our management team, and healthy debate with our management team. And so is there something that might be more visible, council independence, without creating mistrust or operational blurriness? Is there something that would sort of help those numbers or demonstrate more independence? Any thoughts on independence? Brenda.
Well, I wonder if asking more questions during each item would reflect that council's engaged and wanting to be independent, just asking more questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you want to make sure that you're asking questions that are relevant. You're asking questions that are sort of forward thinking. You're asking questions that ensure your fiduciary duty, and not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions. So when you're reading your council package in the beginning, it's really about ensuring that all of your questions are answered to your satisfaction.
Thank you. Erin?
Thanks, Brenda. I almost wonder if these scores almost reflect like a job well done, in terms of we don't necessarily always engage in like a combative debate or like that kind of thing, because we are really well prepared. We get a lot of the information, and like I don't often feel that there's a reason to think, oh, this information is wrong, or I don't understand this information, or I have a widely differing opinion on this. So I think a lot of our I don't know, agenda items are kind of like, yep, okay, all good. We don't really need a healthy debate because we all kind of understand what's going on.
Yes, yeah. The only caveat I would say to that, Erin, and you're absolutely right. Like, these scores are good scores, and we know that things are brought to you in well packaged format. Is that from a public lens? If we're not having discussion, not at nauseam, but if we're not having discussion, what does the public see? And so just sort of tuck that away. We know we should have some questions that we're asking just to test a little bit.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, I wanted to add this comment. I think that one of the problems is that we do have a great deal of trust in the competence of the college. And that's probably a bit of a problem, because we know the college will take care of it. So maybe we don't ask enough questions. That's true, but it is, I always feel very comfortable with the information I'm being presented with. I think it's well thought out. The information seems to be there all the time. So yes, we may be too trusting and we don't ask enough questions in that way. But then, I don't know how you ask more questions in a respectful manner. And then this is an answer to something we were talking about 20 minutes ago. It takes me a while. It's about risk, that maybe we should be reminded of the risks, because I think even for myself, I forget about some of the risks that we go in. Like we set a budget for this year, and there have been, and we have discussed a couple of risks associated with that budget. And I think that maybe would it help to say, okay, we presented this budget, but yes, there are two risks associated with this budget. Number one is that we may have a runoff in expenses again, centered in one particular area I'm always concerned about. But we have to do that job. That's our responsibility. And the other risk is that the measures we put in for revenue may not fabricate. And maybe we need to be reminded of that. Just a comment. So I'm done. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dean. And I think maybe I'm going to flip that one a little bit. Is maybe the questions need to be asked, and so management is bringing all this forward, and we could add another layer to what they need to bring in terms of what are those risks that we need to point out. But it could be that as council members, you should be asking what are the risks the material risks that we should be concerned about.
Thank you. Naomi, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my comment is somewhat similar to Dean's in terms of just, that's what I was trying to say before, trying to make sure that we cover this in our discussions, that we cover the issue of risk. But for example, if there's a discussion at a committee, committee debates something, they put forward, they agree, they put forward a recommendation to council. But if there was an issue that the committee discussed, that might be helpful to include in the report, just so that council is aware of it, that, that discussed ABC, agreed to it, putting it forward, recommend, approval by council. But so it's not a complete package. There's some of the discussion points included in the report. That's not always going to work. And we don't want to lengthen things, but it puts council members who are not on the committee's minds to the issues that were already discussed, and so that they can sort of see how the committee arrived at their discussion. And maybe that something was simple and everybody agreed and then there's nothing to say, but it could be that something was actually complicated and the committee really wrestled with it, and so council should know that too.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Lisa? There she is.
Sorry, trying to unmute. I think it's just interesting how we've just come to that, because my comment before Naomi just said her speech, her little blurb, I was thinking that because all of us are on at least two, sometimes three committees, that we get a lot of information I do at registration or being part of discipline or when I was in audit, that you see all these things and then you come as a council member, so you have a lot of information already. But I agree that maybe when you're not part of something, you might miss a few things. But I feel like if there was something going on, I would hear about it through registration, or I could ask Erica, or I could ask someone in a smaller setting, in a smaller meeting, a question I have. So maybe it doesn't show up at council, but I feel like there is a place to ask those questions. But I agree, maybe there should be a note to say that this is what happened at committee. But I don't know, that's a lot. I would like to hear what like Erica or somebody would say, because she runs those meetings that we have everything is in so much more detail than it is presented at our council meetings because we just possibly can't get into that detail.
Erica, did you want to weigh in on that or?
I think we're a little confused in terms of maybe just the reports that are being referenced coming from the committees. Each of the briefing notes that are provided to council do include a risk analysis. So including sort of the information on financial stuff, any of the briefs that we're presenting to you do go through that sort of overview of all of the risk areas. And the committee reports that are coming to you tend to be sort of, more of the overview of what the committee has done in the quarter or over the year, not really sort of the nitty-gritty of each item that's been discussed, because again, there is sort of some confidentiality around those things. So I think we're just still need a little bit of clarity in terms of the reports that are being referenced here.
And I think the other thing that sort of raises for me is if the committee is bringing a recommendation forward to council, that is the time for other council members to ask some questions. But we don't want to redo the work of committees. We have the committees because they do the heavy lifting. And we need to have trust in that they've gone through the due diligence to bring the recommendation forward. And so, as Erica pointed out, probably getting a bit more into the weeds about what was discussed isn't appropriate, but there is space, I'm sure, at the council meetings for council members to ask questions if there's a concern that something's been left out or did you think about. And so I think that's the space to ask those questions.
Kathy?
Hi, if I can just add my thoughts again, as a new member, I feel like I have a lot of catching up to do as well of things previously discussed. So things that would be important from my perspective as far as being able to engage in healthy debate is just feeling comfortable being able to ask those questions. Like pretty much every question that I've had, Andrew or somebody else has had a very easy, straightforward answer to give me to that. So I appreciate just having that respectful tone where I can feel comfortable asking questions. So if we want to encourage that healthy debate, I think just making sure that that is the tone that's there, that we can ask questions and that we're going to be respectful of each other and listening and trying to find good solutions. So just my comment as a newbie. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Andrew?
I'm good to just speak to something that I would say to any new employee that comes on to the college and our staff, and that there's a certain amount of onboarding and education and training that we can give when an employee comes on. And the same applies to council. Any new council member, and all of you have gone through the trials and tribulations and joys of the orientation session that Brenda and I have been giving to many people. But there's also a certain amount of that there are resources that are made available to all council members that sometimes there's a little bit of self-directed engagement and education that everybody needs to do. And I say this with respect to the council and to our incoming staff. I can't dump everything. I don't have the ability to take my brain and plug your brain in and dump all the information that I have. And if I did that, you'd probably explode. So, and that's not to say that I'm smart. It just says there's a lot of stuff up in here. So I think that there's a certain amount of effort that individuals need to undertake. So go to the council policy manual, look at the materials that are there, look at the orientation manual that's online and available for everyone to see, look at past council discussions as well. And so, you get us, all you have to do is go and look at the meeting materials. You can get a copy of the agenda from every meeting in the last 4 years, and then you can pick and choose which things do I want to really look at or do I not. there's just a certain amount of I guess pre-meeting and pre-orientation that you need to do on your own. We will answer any and all questions that people have, but to a certain degree, there has to be a little bit of a quid pro quo here, which is go and take a look and see what's there. And if you can find nothing, then please come to me or come to Erica and Jeremy. We'll help you out. But if there's something there, have a look at what's there, and then maybe there'll be questions that come from that. But that's fair game because you've got, oh, hey, I had a question. I read this document. So and I'd want to be clear, Kathy. You had made a comment. This is not in response to you. This is actually in response to all council members. For example, there's a whole resource section on risk and on, what are the types of risk and what does it relate to? And then our briefing notes refer back to that document. So if you're kind of not sure anymore, go and take a look at that document and have questions. I think at the next council meeting, we'll pull up that document and we'll go through it to give you a sense of what's coming in the briefing note and how is it relating back to the risk assessment of the situation that you're being asked to decide. So there's a certain amount of that I would ask staff and I would ask council members and even committee members to have a look at and get a sense of what it is that's available to you as a resource.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, that was a very good segue, Andrew, into our last piece, which is around orientation. So again, in 8.4, that newly elected council members, we've adequate orientation. And Andrew, what you just pointed to is my top line there is like, it's the orientation never ends, right? There's always information that you need to learn. And as a newbie on council, there's going to be information there's going to be policy information, but there's also going to be information that you're not going to know because you haven't been part of the conversations and things like that. So it's about getting up to speed on those. But there are some governance, some training needs that were identified, and I've passed those along. But I guess my question is, would there be anything that would make education or orientation more effective for you? It sounds like Andrew and Brenda just went through the recent orientation. So maybe we would look at the newer board or council members. Is there anything that would make it more effective?
Kathy, go ahead.
Since I am the new member, I think I will just really emphasize the being able to feel comfortable asking questions. I think that would be the most important thing.
Okay. Great. And what about from a council perspective? Is there anything that would make education or the orientation aspect of being a board member more effective that you can think of? Not that we want to put more work on the staff and on Andrew and his team.
I do feel like I had pretty good orientation. I was given lots of resources. I read through all of them. There was resources before even putting in my application for the election. So I do feel like the college already provides a lot of really good resources. And maybe a lot of my question is probably because I haven't been present for past discussions of how some of the goings on are happening now. So it's me just getting caught up to okay, well, where are we? And was there a specific reason why? And so when I say that those questions have been answered very well, it's material that I wouldn't have been able to find anywhere else. And I had read through previous meeting packages, even just in considering signing up for a council position, because I wanted to understand the process and make sure that I would be a good member too. So I've worked hard to do what I can to be prepared based on the materials given, and I do feel like substantial materials have been given. So I don't have any other specific feedback.
Perfect. Thanks, Kathy. Brenda.
Kathy, you just sort of, made this idea sort of pop into my head. So new council member, lots of questions. I think maybe having that mentor is important. Someone you can text, here's a question I have, to another council member. Have somebody that you can ask all those questions to that not just during a council meeting, but you thought of it on the, on a Tuesday afternoon and you were in the middle of nowhere. I have this question, or you can email someone. So maybe having that one-on-one mentorship with someone, especially for new council members, might help that orientation be more effective.
And I will input too that Amy actually is my mentor as well. And so in between sessions, I don't think I've actually had any questions for her. It's often things that have come up when we're in the meetings as well. But thank you for that reminder. And yeah, happy to learn.
Great. Well, you have a great mentor. She's excellent. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so if you do have any suggestions, then and maybe offline, send them over to Andrew or the team. And I think, the areas here, it sounds like you just did a deep dive into finance. So you're chipping away at things where people want a little bit more training. So that's great. So, I want to, that's sort of all the areas I want to cover. And I applaud CoNO for doing this on a yearly basis, because I know it can be a bit cumbersome, but it's good to have this reflective conversation about how can we be better. And how can we be better for the public interest? And so I appreciate your discussion today. And that's really all I have. And keep up the great work, because your scores are very high across everything, really.
Okay. Thank you, Sandy. Okay, before I say goodbye to Sandy, may I have a motion to accept the council evaluation report for 2025 to 2026? Aaron first, Kathy second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Sandy, for joining us and presenting the results of the council evaluation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. All right then. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, I believe our presenter has joined us. Yes. So for item 7.2, I am happy to welcome Chris Gitano of BFL Canada to the meeting. And I'm most grateful to Andrew for organizing this session, as I'm sure Chris will explain to us. As board members or council members, we should understand our insurance coverage, and particularly directors and officers' liability insurance. And so knowing the details of our coverage will help us govern more confidently, and especially related, to risks, and understanding what is covered will shape how, or can help shape how we approach risk in strategic decisions and regulatory issues. And I'm still waiting for Chris to turn her camera on. She is with us.
She did email about 10 minutes ago. I let her know we were running a little bit behind, so she may have just stepped away for a moment.
Okay. So in reference, item 7.2 begins on page 176 of your meeting package. There she is. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Chris to speak to the council on the general topic of insurance coverages and those that are in effect for the college. Welcome, Chris. Oh, you're muted, Chris. I hope her internet is working okay. Her video seems to have paused. The pleasures of video conferencing. It's technical stuff. Today's Technical Wednesday. Lots of people have had technical issues today. Oh, there she is. Chris is unmuted. Okay. However, Chris, your video is paused and we're not hearing your audio, though I suspect you're trying to speak. It's potentially one of those Wi-Fi connection issues. Would you like to leave and rejoin and see if the connection is better? Would that be of benefit? I don't know. Oh, connecting to audio. Okay.
Yeah, I'm messaging her. She's going to log out and come back in.
Okay. Thank you. Alternatively, if she wanted to join by audio only and we do the presentation from our end, but I'm not sure if she has her own slides in addition to the package material. Our next item is going into camera. I'd offer to say we do, a short item and come back, but we're going in camera. So how's she doing, Andrew? Any word?
I'm not hearing anything back yet from her.
Okay.
I'm going to remove her.
Okay.
Oh no, I can't, or she'll not be able to rejoin. I would suggest that we go into the in-camera session and then I'll let Chris know that we'll try to reschedule this for the next meeting.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Oh, I'm so looking forward to her presentation. So I'll look forward to it next time. Okay. So the next item or the next couple items relate to confidential and personnel matters of the council in regards to its CEO, specifically the CEO's performance review panel. Sorry, performance review. Please don't join the breakout until we have a motion. Staff will be invited to join for item 8.2, but as noted earlier, Denny and Andrew Parr both declared a conflict of interest and will not be present for item 8.2. May I have a motion that council moves to an in-camera session pursuant to paragraphs B and D of section 7.2 of the Health Professions Procedural Code to discuss personnel matters? Amy first, second Aaron. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, please join the breakout room as presented by Monica. Thank you. Okay, we are missing Felicia. Did we lose her from the other room? And I think that's the only one that's missing. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next item on our agenda. Since there were no items pulled from the consent agenda, there is no other business to be added. So we're going to move on to our meeting evaluation. And in keeping with our new approach, we're going to have the meeting evaluation together in the form of poll questions. So I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes and answer the evaluation questions as posted in the poll on your screen. Okay, thank you for sharing the results, Monica. So the first one, everyone, we have consensus on all of them except for number 8. Is there anything that you feel worked particularly well or that might be improved in the future? And probably one person said yes, the other said no. I'm going to ask whoever responded yes if they'd like to speak up now, or they are welcome to email me after the meeting if they have something that they would like to add. Okay. Excuse me. As always, you're welcome to email me with any feedback or questions regarding our meeting or any meeting. Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 30, 2026 via Zoom. And as a reminder, the usual process will be followed. You're going to be invited to register for the meeting. And when you register, that's your indication that you will be in attendance. And as you saw from this morning, we need to know if we're going to have quorum available for the meeting. This morning we were delayed as we didn't quite have quorum yet. Should anything change and you're unable to attend, please let us know by email. If you believe you're going to be late for your attendance, also let us know by email. Myself, Andrew, or both of us just say, you know what, I'm going to be 10 minutes late, etc. So we are kept abreast of that, and we, especially because we need to make sure we have quorum. Andrew? Did I miss
Sorry,
something?
just a quick note because of something that was mentioned in the pre-meeting networking. So our process is when you register, you get an email from Zoom confirming. Then on the morning of, we resend you that link for the meeting so that you don't need to scramble for it. But we noticed today that I think it was Lisa that mentioned it went into her spam or junk folder. So if you're not getting something from us, like within a day of when you register or the morning of the meeting, check your spam or junk folder just to see, because apparently some might be getting caught there.
And my reminder this morning it said Zoom. It was from Zoom as opposed to from the college. So just look for that
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our business for today. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 12:21 p.m.? Denny seconded Kathy, and we don't need to vote. Meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a great rest of the day, great rest of the summer, and look forward to seeing everybody in September.
Yes, enjoy your summer, everyone.
Thanks.